Welcome, Life Sciences, to a brand new episode of the wonderful subject of life science. If you have been following the series, we are looking at molecules of life. We're looking at biochemistry, all these words that we use to explain the foods that we need to eat to make our bodies work and to build our bodies and to make sure that everything is working properly. The last couple of sections that we've looked at inorganic nutrients, all right, where we looked at minerals and we looked at water. We've looked at organic nutrients. The first one we looked at was carbohydrates. Then we looked at proteins and enzymes. And today's lesson, we're going to look at the last of the series. It's going to be lipids and vitamins. Okay, so remember, molecules of life, biochemistry. We're looking at organic compounds. And today we're going to look at vitamins and lipids. I've put a question on the board over here, and this is actually quite an interesting question, and it is: fats are really, really good for us, but they're also very unhealthy for us. So very often when I'm going to talk about what fats and lipids are, whenever we want to go on a diet and we want to lose weight, the first thing we want to do is, we've got to cut out all the fats. We can never cut out all the fats and all the lipids. We've got to make sure that we eat them. We've just got to be very careful what we eat and how much we're going to eat of it. Okay, guys, on the board, as you said, there are a lot of keywords that you need to go through. I'm not going to go through all of them. They're going to appear as we go through the PowerPoints. But as I said to you, life science, biology, is a language. You've got to be able to use the terms properly, right? You need to be able to speak biologically. So we need to be able to use these terms. We need to be able to understand them, right? So make sure you go through them, go back over the lesson, check all the words, go to your textbook or go to the notes and make sure that you understand each of these terms properly. Okay, so remember, just a quick recap of where we're going. We're looking at organic molecules, really big. I'm going to go straight to the next one over here so you can remember they are really big molecules, right? They are made up of carbon, and as you can see over here, the last couple of lessons, right, let me get my beautiful pen going. We have looked at carbohydrates, we have looked at proteins, and today we're going to look at this concept of what a lipid is. Okay, guys, so the most important thing you need to understand is when I say lipids or when I say fats, very often you jump to the thing of what can make me fat. And the first thing you think of is, that's going to be chocolate and it's going to be chips and all of those kind of things. No. When we look at this concept of fats and oils, I want you to go back to things that are natural sources, all right? Natural sources is how we can get them. So if you have a look at the board, we're talking about your oils. Your sunflower oil that you might cook in, your olive oil, you might have coconut oil, there's almond oil, there's 50,000 million oils at the moment that you can buy, all right? I'm talking about your mayonnaise that you might have in your salad, or if you have a salad, you put salad dressing on it. Some of you might love avocado pears. There's lots of oils in that. In nuts, if you crush it, that oil. When you think of that oily, yes, the nuts have got that like oil on it. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about fats and oils. And I'm going to tell you what the difference is between the two. So be very careful that you understand examples, right? As I said, a sunflower oil, right? Butter, margarine, all of those are going to have what we call lipids, right? A fat or an oil in it. Okay, so let us start at looking at what a fat is made of. When we looked at carbohydrates, we saw they're made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. When we looked at proteins, the last lesson, we looked at carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, And then proteins were a very special group. They had nitrogen, okay? Fats have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So they have very similar, right, elements to that of which carbohydrates have. Now, when we look at a fat, remember we're looking at this whole concept of what a monomer is. And a monomer, we said, is a building block, right? One single unit. So we take one building block and we add them together, and we add them together, and we add them together, and we make one big polymer, one big macromolecule. Now, when we take a fat, fats are very difficult. Not difficult, they fall into their own category. They are made up of one glycerol, right, and 3 fatty acids. Now, I say to my kids, 3 fatty acids. Who was fat? I don't know if you remember, right, when you were growing up, you might have heard the story of the 3 little pigs. All right, what are little pigs? They're fat, right? They're round. And who were they with? The one big bad wolf. Right, so I always try to remember the 3 little pigs and the wolf. That makes up, all right, the monomer of a lipid. Now I'm going to show you the next diagram. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. This is what a fat molecule looks like. Now remember what I said to you. You don't have to know it. But if I look at it, here's my glycerol. All right, there's my glycerol group. And there, 1 little pig, 2 little pigs, 3 little pigs. There's my fatty acid. All right, so that's when we talk about fats. They bonded together. Have a look at the diagram of the top. They joined together. That is actually called an ester bond. They joined together. They're a biggish molecule, but they're one molecule. And you see, when you eat anything like a fat or an oil, when you break it down, you're going to break it down into that molecule. Now, if you have a look at it, it's got lots of carbons and lots of oxygens. And what does that mean? It simply means, you know what? This has got a lot of energy. A lot of energy. Far more than glucose. Far more than glucose. So this could actually keep you powered for much longer. But as I said, as we're going to see just now, oopsie, all right, too much of this, unfortunately, has serious effects on how our body absorbs it and takes it in. Okay, guys, this is a very important concept. Now, when we look at the properties of all of these biochemistry, you need to keep in mind we're looking at the properties for further, when we look at things further on in the lessons, all right? When we look at, specifically, when we look at the heart, all about heart diseases, right? All of those things. When we look at, with the heart, you're going to learn about something called a lymphatic system. A lot of these concepts are going to come back, and you just need to keep them in the back of your mind. I don't know if you guys have ever, all right, if you get your hands full of fat, and you try and put it under water, and it doesn't really work. Because what happens is you try to rub your hand, and it makes these little dots. Very important concept. Look here. Fats do not dissolve in water. Guys, they don't. Fats do not dissolve in water. So when you wash your hands, what do you need to add to it? Soap. When you wash the dishes, what do you need to add to get the fat away? Because it doesn't dissolve in the water. You need to have dishwashing liquid, all right? Sunlight dishwashing liquid that actually breaks the fat and then dissolves it. Now, I wonder if you guys ever, we live in a world where we have to use hand sanitizer all the time because of COVID. And I wonder if you've ever really thought, why must we use hand sanitizer? And the reason we have to use hand sanitizer is the following. This is the COVID virus. Imagine it's a circle. And around the virus over here, there's a fat layer. All right, there's a fat layer. Exactly like we're looking at now. But you know what dissolves fat? Alcohol. All right? Fat dissolves in alcohol. So if I've got a virus with a fat layer, and every time I spray my hands, and I might have the virus on my hands, what do? The alcohol breaks down the layer of that COVID virus, right? And that actually breaks down the virus, and hopefully we won't be able to spread it all over. Okay, so very important part. Now you guys need to think. I eat some fats, it goes, I digest it, and now I need to take that into my body. But blood is going to carry things. But blood is made up of water. I can't put my fat that I've eaten into blood. So what do I need? I need to have a different system that carries my blood. So you're going to, later on in the sessions, we're going to talk about the lymphatic system. And because fat doesn't dissolve in water, we need to have a different system to transport fat around our body. Okay, so guys, why do we need fat? Very important. Let's go through each of them. Okay, these guys, crazy guys, they like to run, right? We need to have a reserve energy. What does that mean? Basically, it means that our first point, our body's going to use glucose, right? That is going to be like the instant source of energy. But if we need to carry on and we need, for example, these crazy guys are going to run a marathon, our glucose doesn't last us. So where does our body go? To our reserve, right? Reserve energy, and that is the fat that we store. Our body doesn't get rid of fats, guys. It just stores it. Okay, second of all, very important, the word insulator. Where do we store the fat? You're going to see later when we look at mammalian tissue. Underneath our skin, we need to have a fat layer. And that's really important. What is an insulator? It keeps us warm. Remember, we've got to keep our body temperature at around about 37 degrees. How do we do that? We need to make sure that we have all these possible means of keeping our body warm. And after this, just probably after the break, we're going to look at these concepts of what vitamins are. And vitamins are also organic nutrients that we need in our diet. And some of the vitamins we dissolve in the fat. And that simply means that we don't need to have or eat as much of that vitamin all of the time. We store it in our fat. It's there. We don't have to always make sure that we eat these and our body stores them. Okay, so it stores the certain vitamins in our fats. Guys, maybe you've heard of omega-3 and omega-6, and very important, they help us. What is metabolic functioning? That's how our bodies run, right? How we work. So simple things, is our brain functioning? Right, do we have enough energy? Right, so when we talk about oils, it's important for things to, as I said to you, what are we looking at? Biochemistry, keeping us healthy. Fats are part of the fish oils, right? That maybe in the tunas, and those of you who like sardines and those kind of fishes and pilchards. All of those things have got good oils in them that are really, really healthy for the development of our brain and how our body is going to function. I hope you start to see how important a varied diet is. Very difficult in our country if, unfortunately, healthy food is expensive and you can't always able to afford it. Okay, guys, very important here, okay? We're going to look at the concept after biochemistry. We're going to look at the concept of what a cell is. And our body is made up of these cells. And now what you have is you have this membrane. So it's basically this fence, right, that separates each cell. Imagine each cell next to us. And here, this is called a cell membrane. And the cell membrane, I'm going to show you, you're going to be very familiar with this structure in the next section when we do the cell, is made up, right, of phosphates and lipids. Guys, fats are essential for building our cell membranes. Our simple unit in our body, it needs fat. You cannot take it out your diet. You just need to maybe eat a little bit less. Right, now also steroids. You know, when you think of steroids, you go maybe back to all these guys who want really big muscles. But gentlemen, your male hormone is testosterone, right? And it's a steroid, and you need fat to be able to build that. Okay, so guys, your reproductive hormone, very important. Okay, these are all steroids. Maybe when you do digestion, you need bile salts, and bile salt is something in your digestive system, funny enough, that's going to actually help you to digest fats. Right, and we're hormone, we need fat for our body to make a hormone. It's called cortisol, and it's our stress hormone. It's how our body handles the stress, right? We actually have a hormone, right, that actually kind of keeps us, I won't say happy, but kind of balanced, and we don't go all maniac all of the time. That's the stress hormone. Okay, so just now there's the two things when we come to fats and when we talk about what is a fat and what is an oil. Okay, so here is the distinction, a long word coming up. All right, guys, the word is polyunsaturated. And what you don't need to know the biochemistry, it's really not important. Basically what it is if it's an oil, all right, it's liquid, all right, it's runny. Think about the olive oil, you can squeeze it, all right, that kind of oil. So what we say is, if it's a plant, if it's an oil, well, if it's an oil from a plant, we call it an oil, okay? So when we talk about all the plant lipids, we give it an oil. And what will happen is all of them at room temperature, it will be liquid, all right? If you take butter out of the fridge or margarine out of the fridge, it's going to melt. Even if it's at room temperature, it's going to melt, it's going to go liquid, okay? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. We want that. Liquid, liquid. Doesn't get hard. All right, now the next one. Guys, this is the one some of us like. It's the fat we find on meat. I don't know if you guys have, if you cook some meat and it's got a lot of fat in it. So we cook the meat and then the fat, it goes liquid, and then we put the pan and we leave it. And we come back just now, a little while, and what has happened to the fat? It's gone hard, right? It's gone hard. Animal fat goes hard. Now let's take that. I eat animal fat. What does it do? It goes into my blood vessels and it hardens. All right, it hardens. When we do the heart, you're going to see here. Guys, so your blood vessel, this is an artery over here that carries blood. Now, this is the hole where blood goes through. You want it to be open. You want it to be big and open. Now, if we have too much, especially of the fat, right, animal fat that gets hard, look where it gets hard. Because fat, at some point, and you'll see later lessons, it does enter the bloodstream, especially in the heart. And look at this. It blocks our arteries. It blocks our arteries. And where does it block the arteries? In the heart, right? So the meat, the fat from meat, hardens and forms like a hard plaque, right? Hard substance. And we block the arteries, and that is how we can have a heart attack, right? When the blood can't get to our heart, or the blood vessel bursts, and the muscle, the tissues in our heart actually die off. Okay, guys, the last thing we're looking at here, how do we test? Remember, you've got to do a food test. Food test, a lot of my clothes, I think, that are cooking at home, I do the food test all the time. Do you have those little stains on some of your t-shirts where you've cooked with fat? That's exactly what the fat test is. So all we do is, right, you take a sample of, you take a fat, and what does fat dissolve in? Alcohol. So I take maybe some butter, alcohol, and I shake it up, right? And then I take whatever's in there and I pour it onto maybe a piece of paper. Guys, this is water. That's going to evaporate. That's an oil stain. Right, so how do we know that it's got fat in? It's going to give us this lovely greasy spot. As I said, how many of you have got maybe t-shirts at home with those lovely greasy spots on it? Okay guys, that's all for this section. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.